Aram, Zimbabwe is such a country, a youth country too, a
Mm.
young country too,
Yeah.
and you work with the youth.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you think the voice of youth, are the voice of youth being heard in Africa? Do you think in general, mainly in Zimbabwe?
Not loud enough. I think right now the voice of the youth in Zimbabwe and Africa is misunderstood. I think it falls under this umbrella where people think that young people are just into entertainment and jokes, and that they don't really know what they're talking about, and also being digital natives, it's hard for the older generation to really connect. So I think a lot of work still needs to be done. They have a voice, but it's not being heard. It's not being understood. I think they're hearing it, but they don't hear what we're saying.
And, and what are the consequences for the society of this kind of thing?
If young people are not heard,
Yeah.
I think you lose touch of context. You lose touch of context because I like to always lean into Ubuntu. Ubuntu is my thing, right?
Yeah,
So, in the context of Ubuntu, right, I am because you are, right? But in age-old tradition, the system of Ubuntu, the old and the young had their own roles, right? So the old, their role was to sort of establish something, establish a concept, pass on their knowledge and their wisdom, groom the next generation, strengthen, create resources, financial, economical, social, etc. And then the role of the young people is to provide context, right? So uh, provide context, build on top of what's been said, right? But now the problem is, it's like the context is being ignored, or it's not a nice context that the older generation is really happy with. Yeah. So it's like, well, I don't like your context. So we're kind of gonna, take maybe a little bit of what you're saying. We're gonna carry on with the way we used to do things. So I think you end up having a society that's stagnant, or that has a very frustrated majority population, and that's constantly fighting, that seems to be fighting progress only because they don't feel heard.
And what's the role of media and information literacy, or the empowering the youth voice, which I think it's underneath this umbrella of, to improve the situation, to give the youth the voice that they deserve and they need to be heard?
Mm-hmm. I think media and information literacy works both ways. I think it's not just for the youth, but I think the older generation, actually, I think there's so much of a drive to educate young people, but then we forget the parents.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll give a classic example, right? I'm a teacher. So if I teach a child on design thinking, for example, entrepreneurship, at school, they come, they learn, they're really great, they're fantastic. When they go back home and they want to interact now with their family or their parents, or they're looking for an ecosystem and they're looking for support for the new ideas that they've just learned, they don't get that support because they don't understand what it is that the child has been taught. So I think it has definitely has to be lateral. Like, you can't just focus on one aspect. So media and information literacy is very important, but I think the people that actually need it the most are the older generation, so that they understand where young people are coming from, so they don't take what's online, or what people are doing in the online or the digital space, and misconstrue it or take it out of context, because they don't understand, they don't get the knowledge that we get, and yet they're the ones that are still in positions of power and positions of influence where they can actually influence policy and movement. So I think there needs to definitely be it's a two-edged sword, it's a double-pronged approach to media and information literacy.
And what's the work that you do and with the youth that's so hard and so important in Zimbabwe?
So my role is to bridge the information gap.
Yeah.
So we work with people across the board, so young people and old, but obviously because we are youth, we represent the youth. And our work involves education on technology, specifically the fourth industrial revolution, because that's kind of where Africa still is. The fourth industrial revolution, understanding its impact on African economies and societies as well. And then what we then do is we then say, okay, this is what the world is doing. How does it apply on a local context? And try and find a way to build on that and help people take ownership of those tools, take ownership of the information, of the technology, and turn it into what they need it to be in order for them to progress. Sometimes technology can be something as simple as a what we call a dumb phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes for someone that is revolutionary technology. It's also not looking at technology as only the AI and metaverse, but it's also looking at tech that can have an impact at whatever level, even at a grassroots level.
It's a kind of techno diversity, if I
Techno
say.
diversity, yes. I learned a new word today, which was a socio
Social technique.
technical movement. So I think that's kind of what we do. We look at technology from a very social context.
Yeah. And
Mm.
when we leave this local perspective and we look to Africa in a geopolitical perspective,
Yeah.
do you think it's related the
Mm.
way Africa is being heard
Yes.
to the rest of the world and needs to be heard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Africa needs to be heard. If anything, we need to be understood as well. And I think in terms of on a geopolitical place, I was listening to a speaker recently, and they were talking about how Africa is a great market place. It's a theatrical stage for companies and investors, and we have great marketing power at the moment. So I feel like the narrative, it's not just about Africa being heard, but it's about the narrative. What is the narrative? Africa is going through a very profound revolution at the moment, in terms of self pride, and I think sometimes it's misconstrued a little bit, like when you're looking from the outside in. But Africa as a continent for a long time has kind of been under the influence of everyone else. We're the hugest consumers in the world. Everyone comes and we consume, consume, consume. But like now, Africa is at the point where it's like we have found our identity. We're understanding our value. We're understanding who we are. And we no longer just want to consume. We want to contribute. We want to be heard. We want to build. And so I think in terms of in a geopolitical landscape, I think the world is paying attention to Africa. But I just hope that they hear us in a way that's not through an unconscious bias. Because that unconscious bias dictates how we connect with each other, how we understand each other.
Yeah.
I can have an unconscious bias about you because you're white, right? And I say, so therefore, he probably only perceives me, or I only understand you in a certain context. You may say something, and I'll take it as racism, because it's unconscious bias. I've already decided you're this person, So I think we need to be very conscious of that, even on a continental level, and in how people engage with the continent and how the continent engages with the world, and really pay attention to that unconscious bias.
Amazing. And you made it such an abstract. I'm breathless here. Everything. But I heard you talk a little bit some hours or days ago.
Mm-hmm.
You approached the concept of Ubuntu and AI to me.
Yes.
Explain a little bit this wonderful thing again.
So Ubuntu, I feel, is an ancient form of machine learning. Now, when you look at machine learning is basically a node building on top of another node. And so growing and expanding, and you get new information, the node grows, splits, creates two new nodes, etc. Right? That's the basis, very, very rudimentary explanation of machine learning. Now, Ubuntu is actually considered something the same. I mentioned how the system of Ubuntu is not just, it's communal, I am because we are, but it's also building upon, right? So the young person, the old person, right? Elder. The elder passes on, right? Knowledge, information, resources. The young person takes it, doubles it, builds on it, shares that knowledge, right? You share it with the community. That community then shares it with the next. If you look at it, it's a very ancient system of what is now called machine learning. And even if you unpack AI, you unpack the metaverse, it's actually very African in context. You know what I mean? And even just the way Africa as a hub has always been a hub of trade and very interconnected. So, for example, today we're in Zambia, but we have people from Uganda, from Sierra Leone, from Togo, from Chad, and then we can all find intersections. We all find places that we have really, really in common. Say, oh, I've got that in my culture too. I've got that in my country too. So it's in that context, the same way a machine can learn multiple languages, right? Machine learning, it'll adopt multiple perspectives and then create one and give you what you look for. It's the same in the African context and how we operate as an Ubuntu system. It's actually a very refined, in my opinion, very refined form of machine learning. We just didn't have a name for it.
It's a refined form of being a human being,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it is.
Yeah, to
It
live
is.
in society.
To live within the context of where you are and to care about the people around you
Exactly.
and to understand that their success is yours. And I think it goes down to a very human level. I think Ubuntu cares more about the person. Ubuntu was never about tribe. Ubuntu was never about race. We'd have the Chinese or whoever would come through, like I'm talking thousands of years ago, and there was no Ubuntu was we would treat you the same, no matter where you come from, no matter who you are, no matter which tribe, what language you speak, you are a human first. Before you are your titles, before you are your nationality, before you are your tribe, you're a human being first. And I think we're in a weird way, we are losing sight of our humanity in our quest to be so digital. We're forgetting what it means to be human. So much so that even the computers have to ask, "Are you human?"
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my concept around Ubuntu and machine learning.
Thanks so much
You're
for this.
welcome.
Thank you.